Can you just tell me how you got into the beat in this, your particular one?
Well, I'd been a political reporter in Ottawa for several years. I mean, I've been at CBC for 30 years. And it Washington was kind of the next logical place to go. And I'd covered the United States before. I mean, the beat here is the White House and the rest of America. It's a pretty big beat and pretty varied. And so you have to work the beat simply by being on top of everything that's going on in America. I mean, I'll cover everything from the Boston bombing and the Oklahoma tornado to Barack Obama. And it's, from a Canadian perspective, it's a pretty important bureau. And so everybody, I can tell you that everybody in the CBC wants to work here in CBC News. It's the place you strive to be. It's the busiest place. We are neighbors with America. So we grow up knowing all about it. So in a sense, you spend your whole life preparing for this bureau. And then you ask for it. And I've often said that the best way to get any job in this industry is to show desire. Like, if you want a job and you let people know that you want that job, that will put you above everybody else whose resume is roughly the same as yours. Mm-hmm. It's all about desire. And if you reach for it, maybe you'll get it. And I made them know that I wanted to come here. And I was lucky enough that they agreed to send me.
When you started, probably you remember, like, how had you learned and how you get up to speed with all this stuff, what was going on? Like, you came there, boom, you have to do the news, so.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I mean, in this job, like, one of the great things about this job is that every single day you're learning, right? Whenever you read anything online, you're making yourself a better reporter. Whenever you watch anything on TV, you're making yourself more knowledgeable about the place where you are. You're always learning, and if you love to learn, it's a great job that way. So you just have to dive in, and you have to learn about stuff that you enjoy learning about, and you have to learn about stuff that you have no interest in, stuff that you have no clue about, because tomorrow you'll have to do a story on, foreign relations between Washington and Moscow, let's say, as is the case right now. Yeah. You never know what's around the corner, so you are always, always, always reading. You'll be sent somewhere, for example, to Haiti, which is in our realm of the beat here, after the earthquake. And you think you know peripherally about Haiti, but you don't. So what I do on any of those trips is I'll just print up a stack of stuff, and I spend my entire time on the flight there. You're just reading and reading and reading. You're trying to learn. You'll call people. What do you know about X, Y, or Z? Talk to people. Learn, learn, learn. That's all you ever do. When I came here to Washington, I moved here across the border 2 days before Barack Obama was elected in 2008. And you're following politics from Canada, but not really, And all of a sudden, I was on the air talking about who he'd appointed as the Undersecretary of State. You know what I mean? So you never go to air without knowing your stuff. But sometimes it's complicated, and you just have to make sure that you know it. Because the minute you go on air you can't bluff. You know what I mean? You have to know your stuff when you're talking to people. It is your responsibility to your viewers and to yourself, because you'll look like an ass if you're trying to make like you know stuff that you don't know. And finding out is so easy. The information is there online or at the end of a telephone. So don't be afraid to pick it up and call people and say, what do you know about X? Because the amazing thing is, people will tell you. They're happy to spread knowledge, and that's what you have to do.
So what do you do during the typical day?
Well, today, for example, my assignment is to report on how the world is reacting to what's happening in Ukraine. So I'm going to spend it's in the morning now. And I've got a file for national radio and for national television. So I will spend a couple of hours reading and looking at video that is available to us online from Reuters and CBS and various people that we have relationships with at CBC. I'll talk to our desk, who's been talking to the two reporters we have in Ukraine. I'll learn. I'll gather, learn. I'll think about whether it's worth bringing somebody into this studio where I sit now to do an interview with them about the situation. I haven't decided whether we need to do that or not yet. I'll figure that out as the day goes on. So you spend your day on a story like this, learning, trying to make sense of it in your own head so that you can make sense of it to Canadians. It's an unusual story because I'm gathering little bits from around the world. I'll include what's going on in Brussels with NATO and in the United Kingdom and in Washington. Other stories, for example, the Boston bombings, for example, of course you go to Boston as we did, and you spend, your days then are quite different. It's about seeing things with your own eyes and getting out there and interviewing people, and that is learning on the fly. You go out and you're in the thick of things and you're grabbing people by the shirt collars and you're saying, what do you know? Tell me everything you know. But in a sense, it's the same thing. You're either learning firsthand in person or you're learning on the telephone at your desk in Washington.
Mm-hmm. And how do you find reliable sources, like for all your stories, even for Ukrainian one, not taking into account your reporters who are in Ukraine? How you will find the sources?
Well, that's a good question. Oftentimes you'll go to other countries. For example, we were in Venezuela earlier this year after Chavez died. And you need people on the ground who are not going to be biased, who can translate often for you accurately, and who, as I say, have no political agenda. Fixers, they're called. And good, the CBC is in a great position in that it has been around the world a bunch of times, and we know people in different parts of the world. And I think on that trip, we called up Connie Watson, who was our South American reporter for many years, no longer with us. And I knew she'd been to Venezuela, and so I said, who did you talk to there? And she connected us. It's all about, you talk to people who've been before, you talk to people you trust to get you people that you trust. Likewise, in Israel and the West Bank and Gaza, we know people because we've been there before, and this is like gold. And you say, and if they can't help you out because they're working with somebody else, they'll know somebody. So it's all on a kind of a wing and a prayer, but it's a trustworthy wing and a prayer because that's crucial. When we were in Japan, after the tsunami, for example, I had a feeling that our fixer was just giving a bit too positive spin about Fukushima, and so you use your own sense as well, right? And then you take what they're saying with a grain of salt, and you ask other people, and you get secondary sources and things like that. The other part of the equation is political reporting and sources in the White House or in Capitol Hill or in the Parliament buildings in Ottawa, and that's a bit of a different animal. And what's critical there is time and building relationships with people over time. Going for a drink with somebody, going for lunch with somebody, developing a relationship, doing stories about the issues that they're connected to. They see that they want to know that you're trustworthy as well before they tell you anything on the sly. But what you have to be always aware of in political relationships is that they will always have an agenda, and they will always want to spin it, whether it's a liberal, conservative, whoever it is, they will want to push it their way. And so you always have to be thinking that, even though you're on friendly terms with these people. It's a complicated game, and a lot of it is to do with your gut. How do you feel about what's being told to you based on what you've seen with your own eyes?
From your own perspective, what do you think the hugest challenge in your beat?
Well, that's a good question too. These are all good questions. The biggest challenge right now is that over the last number of years, really going back to the dawn of 24-hour news channels in the 1980s, and add to that the growth of online in recent years, what it has really done, I'll add, and the development of technology generally. No longer do we need a satellite truck to go live from somewhere. We have what is called, for example, a Degero box, which means it uses cellular technology. It's like Skype on steroids, if I can put it that way. And the technology now allows you to go live from almost anywhere at any time. And because of the growth of 24-hour news and the advent of online, your deadline is now. You land on the ground after a tsunami or an earthquake or a political upheaval, and your deadline is now. Like, think time has gone out the window. And you were asking earlier about, preparing and how to cover beats, and I was talking about how you have to read and be on top of things all the time. That's because the phone might ring and they'll say, there's been a coup in country X. We need you to talk about it now. So your responsibility is to be accurate and balanced and fair and informative and engaging. So that's the challenge. There is very little prep time anymore. And it's not, viewers and readers expect you to be perfect, and so they should, right? But there's just less and less time to think about it. And that's life, right? Because on the one hand, it's great because we can be there, we can be on the air now. But man, that means your brain has to work like on hyperspeed from the get-go. And you'll learn how to do it, and you'll learn how to say enough to at least get you through that first one. And then as soon as you get through your first story, you think, okay, how can I be smarter about that? How can I learn more? Who can I talk to now? It's a constant process. But to me, that's the biggest challenge. There's no time to get ready. You have to be ready all the time.
So if I will go tomorrow to work in the same area as you do, what advice you will give me, or advices?
Start learning now. Read. Talk to people. If you have your sights set on a particular place you want to work, learn everything you can about that place. Not like you're cramming for an exam, so that you understand it. Because once you understand something, it's like the key to everything else. You can learn all the details once you get the essence. But that takes time. So, like I said at the beginning, never stop learning. I think the people who end up in this field are naturally curious anyway. So it's kind of fun in a sense, right? It's like constant learning is a great thing in my books. So learn all you can. Secondarily, whether you're reporting for online or newspapers or radio or television, whatever it is that you want to do, learn about the program or the publication or the online that you want to work for. What kind of stories do they do? What is the style? What is the tone? How do they tell stories? Learn about them. That's the key, right? If you don't like to do things the way Network X does them, they're not going to hire you, right? Learn. Learn about the place. Learn about the outlet. And show an interest. That gets back to desire. To me, let's say you want to report on Ukraine. This is a bit of an extreme example, but go there. Show that you want it. You know what I mean? Show that you did a story with Ukrainians in Toronto because you so love that story. You know, that you demonstrate how badly you want it. And I'm telling you, that makes all the difference. 10 people get interviewed for a job, and one of those 10 people has done a feature on Ukrainians and how they feel in Toronto, head and shoulders above everybody else, because you want it, you're so interested in it, right? So learn about the place you want to be, learn about who you want to work for, and demonstrate how badly you want it. 1, 2, 3. It won't guarantee it, but I'd say you have a much better chance of landing that job, and you'll be in a better position to execute it once you get in there than if you didn't do those 3 things.